speaking of Hanania, what are some of the craziest, scariest ideologies, ideas, experiments that come out of this movement? I mean, there's a lot of attempts to be like frozen, right? So they can be woken up later, revived later. What are some of the craziest things that you've come across in this field?
So it turns out that this is actually a very difficult question because there are so many things to mention. I don't know where to start. I mean, Gabe Bankman-Fried, Sam Bankman-Fried's brother, he exchanged, I think it was some messages with somebody at Open Philanthropy. I think that's the case but I know this for sure that they had talked about buying the island nation of Nauru so they can build a bunker specifically for effective altruists and long-termists who are test crealists, right? The long-termists are also transhumanists, singularitarians, and so on. So hence the acronym TESCREAL. So he wanted to buy this island nation, to build a bunker so that in case 99.99% of humanity dies, this is what they said in their messages, then EAs, test crealists could repopulate the world. There's also cryonics, like you said. You can opt. So if you don't have a lot of money, you don't need to have your entire body cryogenically frozen. You can just have your head frozen.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So for the poor people out there, this is still an option, even though it's nonetheless quite pricey. But I knew a bunch of people in the community who wore dog tags, and the dog tags, they slept with these dog tags on. So with instructions for how medical professionals should treat their body in case they happen to die. Yeah.
Wow.
And the last thing I would mention is that, the world, as I've said before, the world is full of bizarre, strange, off-putting, potentially dangerous ideologies. Most of them we don't spend our time critiquing, right? Because they aren't influential. They don't have power, right? That's not the case with these ideologies. And the one thing I would want people to really know is that part of what it means for us to bring about utopia, to transition from our current human era to this paradisaical post-human era, is for our species, Homo sapiens, to be disempowered, marginalized, or eliminated. So I think that at the heart of this ideology is a pro-extinctionist view, right? So there are many, many people in the community who are explicit about this. And they say, once we create posthumans, our successors, our digital successors, then we should bow out, right? We should exit left, exit stage left, or whatever the phrase is, because, we're just going to be inferior beings that are using up valuable resources on Earth and in the universe more generally, what they refer to as our cosmic endowment of negentropy. And so we should bow, but and others who don't explicitly say this, nonetheless implicitly affirm this, because it just doesn't make sense to have us around. So really at the heart of this idea that this eschatological end times vision, that we're going to transition from a biological world to a digital world, is that our species is going to disappear. And what's even more alarming is that they do not anticipate or they do not anticipate this happening in the distant future. They want it to happen in the near future, in the coming years or decades, at least within within our lifetimes. As Sam Altman said, that he thinks that our brains will be digitized within his lifetime, right? So this is a near-term threat to the collective survival and well-being of our species. And I think when we list global scale threats to humanity, in addition to things like asteroid impacts, global pandemics, nuclear war, we should also have on that list the various ideologies that are actively advocating for the creation of a new world in which we would be, like I said before, disempowered, marginalized, and ultimately eliminated.
Can you talk about network states?
Yeah, so Silicon Valley has been sort of obsessed for a minute, especially like Peter Thiel and this guy Balaji Srinivasan, with not living in U.S. democracy anymore. And there's been, books on the topic since forever. But I think that the one that is called the network state is by Balaji Srinivasan, who is trying to brand this idea as his own. But Curtis Yarvin is, kind of Peter Thiel's buddy, and he's a software engineer that has received funding from Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen. And he also talks about this idea of, these kind of, little tech monarchies where there's not everything is run like a startup. And these dudes have been fascinated with this type of stuff for a while. They made a little kind of it's a special economic zone in Honduras called Prospera, and there's a few others, and there's plans for others to be developed. But basically, like, they want to have these little anarcho-capitalist communities that are probably smaller than like a normal state, but for a while it was all about like getting out of the United States to do this, to do it in other countries, or to do it in the open sea was a big idea around 2008 2009. And there was an institute called the Seasteading Institute that Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt gave money to this guy Milton Friedman's grandson Patry Friedman to figure out how to live in the open sea. But what seems to have changed recently is a lot of these billionaire dudes seem to have decided that maybe the best way for them to realize their illiberal, anti-democratic vision of running the government more like just a straight up business is like by making the United States that versus leaving. Curtis Yarvin talks about this idea of he calls it rage, retire all government employees. And now we have something, and it is a kind of a way of getting rid of the administrative state. And people have been talking about this in Silicon Valley for a while, but now we have like Doge, which is like also a 4-letter acronym for getting rid of the administrative state. And it just seems like these dudes are making a lot of progress, whereas like their previous vision was leaving somewhere and having these little tech utopias, network states, called different things. Like now they're trying to do it here.
Yeah, Doge seems to be rage in action. Right. I mean, it's exactly what Curtis Yarvin was advocating for, getting rid of the administrative state, the deep state, what my friend calls the competent state.